Back in the truck again with the trailer, so we're pulling into the auction. So let's see what we got ourselves into again. Well, you can see I got a couple things back there, but the big white thing was a little bit of a pain in the ass to load up. Stuck wheel or something. Well, let's get into it later. First things first, let's handle this. Okay, that's like 95% better. I missed a couple spots, but it started raining and I'm absolutely freezing. Okay, a couple days have passed and I got the van still up here on the trailer. And I'm doing some looking around and put some brake fluid in it, found a brake leak, so that's why it was listed as no brakes. There was nothing in the master cylinder. So there's no fluid in the master cylinder because luckily it's a short run. I don't know if it's the hose or the brake line, but either way, you just run a new line. Low on coolant. Put a new battery in it. Last one was shit. The van kind of runs poorly. It has been sitting for a few years. All of these terminals were gross. So these terminals were broken. So I cleaned everything up. Had to trace a million of these big battery cables. Seems like there was an issue and they just ran a new cable, and the issue was just the dirty terminals. There's a big fuse circuit breaker down there. I have it bypassed right now with the jumper cables. I will take care of that later. Okay, in here was a mess. That battery box was sitting here. There was a lid for it, no battery. There was some wires like this, and they look pretty important. That one goes down through to the frame right here. It's extra ground. That one goes all the way to the front, extra ground. I think they couldn't figure out what the deal with this was. This wire was obviously cut. It was a clean cut, and it was tucked back in there, and as I was trying to figure this out, kind of was contorting around, and I just happened to see the tail end of a wire, and I pulled it down because it was all curled up, and I just tied those two together because obviously it went together. This wasn't plugged in. I took the battery box out. They were trying to jump this override switch, which now if you hit that, it overrides the pump, the main pump. There's also a master switch in here that had two blown fuses that overrides the emergency pump. So I'll show you where that is. These are the controls for down here. So I know this one for a fact is counterclockwise. One of them's up and one of them's in and out. Can't really tell right now. And then the corresponding ones underneath it. So counterclockwise, clockwise, or vice versa. I'm gonna label them. There isn't any labels. So they aren't electrical switches, they're manual valve overrides. Everything works. So that's how I was able to override the pump. This bypasses it. I'll show you how I did that. And then I was able to move the function and it moves. Okay, this looks a little messy, but everything's plumbed in redundancy. So I took this cover off. It's never been off before. That's the main pump. It's bigger. This is a backup pump. that always has 12 volt going to it. This relay always has 12 volt going to it. The other side of that goes down to the main pump. So the override switch works. There's a power and a ground, small power, just thin wire like this one here that overrides the pump. Same on this side, it goes to this relay. All the connections were bad. There was a melted wire that went from, well, first off, it was the power and ground were flip-flopped on this. There was no ground to begin with. So I added a ground. I drilled a hole here. These were just like pushed up in the case, like grounded up against something. The front control was the same way, just bare wires, just sandwiched in between the metal. It's not a adequate connection. Obviously, that's not how this lift came. And everything how it works on the circuit board here, you can see like the battery backup, like it'll go to one side. So obviously it connects to the other side. So like a power will go from there to there. To the other side has power, goes to the toggle switch. The other side of that does not have power till you hit the toggle switch. Well, when you come back, that one has power. The one next to it then gets power, which then goes all the way up to the boom and then comes back down around. So I was able to figure out everything worked, if you're following still. And these pumps are not constant pumps. I knew that from the jump. But you can't just flip them on, let them run all the time, then do a function, do your work, then like it'll kill the battery. They draw too much power. So the only way these pumps are supposed to run is when you're doing the function. So I was losing the signal there. I found that, and it was all to do with a melted power wire that was on the wrong side of this relay, or solenoid rather, that came up to here. These are all new wires, or found in here, new wires, and jumper wires. And I just repurposed them, put new heat shrink connectors on there. The plumbing's pretty cool. So the main, actually this is the reservoir. So the main feed is, it takes a second to figure it out, hold on. The main feed comes from down there and goes through this, and then that gets pumped up into the valve body, and then eventually it gets returned through the filter, and then the bypass comes through the filter. So all the hose is looking in pretty okay shape. I have a few hours into sorting this out. What I do know is like the red wire matches the corresponding to the other side, which then goes to the electrical part of the valves. So they're just one wire down there and one wire up there. So when that gets power right here, it's the same as pushing this down. So those are the manual controls. So it's pretty redundant. There is a cover here for this. I'm gonna leave that off for now. This is the cover for the battery box. Eventually, I'm going to, when I fix the circuit breaker, get a connector also to fix that wire. Tuck that back in. I'm going to have to buy another battery. Luckily, there's a ground here, but for the power, I'll just be able to run a power up to that, up to in here where there's main power. And I'll get like a deep cycle, so then it'll draw off this battery, and that'll also charge off the alternator. The van does have to run for all this to work. The key has to be on. The best bet is to leave the van running. So I'm gonna have to get it to run better, leave the van on, and then function all this. I need this wrench. And then we go into the bucket. I had this all apart and I was testing inside there. So currently, to make a function work, you would have to push that in and then do a function. That's currently not working. But you would have to touch these wires together. If I can't get that to work or find a replacement, I can just put a switch there and make it a two-hand operation. But so far, if I touch these together, motor works. And I did one function thus far. And we'll see if it works. Okay, down's not working.
Oh, great.
I don't know if I mentioned, but I'm kind of scared of heights.
You mean the one thing I was worried about?
Yeah, before I go higher, I want to go down.
Yeah. I also appreciate that. You know what would be funny? You went higher, down didn't work. I have to call the fire department.
Stop that.
Do the other down. Golly, it doesn't.
I was slightly nervous. Okay, so these two wires are the power to make the function on. This pulling this in and out is in and out, and this joystick is a little wobbly to where this side's not making contact. I may have figured it out. I think it's this rusty spring. Can you go in the garage and get me WD-40? Okay. I just have to unseize this spring and it'll work. The turkeys agree. You heard them? Okay, so I even figured the controls out. There was supposed to be a button in the front. That acted as the wires, not the in and out, because that's the function of the lift. This collar is seized to the spring, and that's why I couldn't get it down or that way. I sprayed some lube in there, and I took a screwdriver and I started prying the spring. The spring was seized to the shaft, and I was able to skirt on this shaft forward. And hold on when the cars pass. So if you listen, click, 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 click. Click there. And there's a click in there. That one's quieter. But this spring is supposed to push this back down. So I'm gonna have to work this back and forth. That should take out some of the flop. So I'm just gonna keep lubing it and working it. And then this scared me because I pulled that, and that's the tilt for the lock. So when you're in use, there's a pin there, and it locks locks in there, but if you want, you turn it like that and it won't lock. It'll just be automatic, and that's a shock, like just like a car shock to dampen the wiggle. Okay, just teed into the line over there. It came back around. The main feed comes from behind it and then goes up to the master. That brake hose is a T in itself. One of the brake lines were replaced before going to the back. They kind of did the same thing there. I don't know why they didn't go all the way. I don't know. Probably the same reason I've done it. I just gotta find a way to bleed it now. Hard to see, but there's a Buyer's Products automatic 200 amp rated breaker switch. So if it trips, once it cools down, it'll re-trip itself. So I think that's a better for safety instead of a one-time use fuse. I got the battery reconnected. We're gonna try and get off the trailer now. I bled the brakes last night. I had my girlfriend help me with that. Okay, I got it off and backed up over here. I thought it was gonna be eventful, so I didn't film it. I thought maybe it could have went bad. They were supposed to be locked brake or something like that, but I think when I was winching it on, that they had the e-brake on, and I think when they dropped it off at the auction, it had the e-brake on. Because there was a little bit of drag marks, I don't know. It is down a little bit on power. It doesn't seem like it's missing, like it's hitting on all cylinders. I just think it's like injectors are gummed or bad gas or something like that. I think it just needs fresh gas, some injector cleaner, and let it run. It seems to be running fine. I mean, I don't know how, I'm not a Ford guy, so I don't know if these motors are like sewing machines or if I'm just gonna let it rock. It's by no means a nice van. I just want it to be usable. So I'm gonna let it run and see what it does. I'm gonna go bring the trailer back. And then it's been here about a week or so. It sounds like manifold leak to me. I know, what I do know is Fords have that same manifold leak like the Chevys do. Broken studs. I know the V10s had it. I don't know much about 5.4s. I think they might have had it. But pretty happy with it thus far. Just gotta do some cleaning up. Okay, so got the alternator pulled. I'm not getting anything charging on the van. So I was playing with the wiring, and this yellow wire, I just took it out of the plug and put it back into a loop to go into the positive, because that's where it would get positive from anyways. I just took a little piece of the sheathing off of this, and I was testing it over here. That goes to the light bulb, the charging light in the van, so that gets 12 volt. I thought, I don't have my good multimeter here, so I tested this. So that yellow wire comes over here. I'm like, that looks like a bad connection. And this says fuse on it. I believe it says fuse. Gauge, fusible link, possibly. And it just gets power over here, and then that goes across this, then to the battery. It was going to this battery isolator. So how a battery isolator works is you would have battery power in there, alternator power there, which I broke. This would get switch 12 volt power, and then that one would go to the secondary battery for the man lift. That never had anything on it, so that tells me this doesn't work, and somehow it was working, so I just bypassed it. So I'm just trying to get the alternator to charge. Seems like that's kind of important when you're up there to have juice. So what I'm thinking is, since this should just make power the way I have it set, it doesn't even go into default voltage when I pull that. So it's not making anything for headway here. What I'm thinking is when the wires got cut in the back, or somebody was screwing with this, they may have fried the alternator even though it looks new. Either the voltage regulator on the back of it, which I could show. So obviously this isn't the original alternator. I think this said used, or that's an FORD, no idea. Which you could just tell because it says Motocraft. So I'm thinking either this is bad or the whole thing's bad. Not sure. I did most of my testing. Let's go try and get another one of these, but not pay for it. Okay, I swear I'm not a Ford guy. We got van chassis, one of 3 here. Never popped the hood, but this one's way nicer underneath it. Booster looks brand new. All right, let's see what we can do. Okay, this is way nicer. How many miles are on this? Not the same. Only got 10,000 miles less. Seat looks a little bit better. I don't think the other one has armrest. This is certainly nicer. Honestly, I don't have that. Huh. All right, if I keep that other van for around, I might just take everything out of it. Like the headliner's way nicer than the other one. The other one's got holes and stank on it. Huh. Dang, everything's nicer. Okay, everything's the same-ish. Except the intake's plastic on this one. I don't know if that's better or not. And then on the bottom of the other one, the other intake, there's a bigger box. And then there's a plug on it, so I don't know what's different about that. Coils look different. Injectors are different color. Hey, stop that. Everything looks the same. Huh. Probably pull that out for a core. Maybe I'll do that. Maybe not today. But I gotta count the ribs, the other one. The belt, I just cut it. I don't know if these tensioners, well, focus central. I don't know if these tensioners are like one-time use, but golly, are they hard to move. This one, when it moves, I just cut the belt. It's raining, so I don't feel like playing super long. That tension, or idler is seized. Maybe that has something to do with it. I doubt it. The belt doesn't seem as wide. Take a video of it so then I can count the ribs if I don't have to. I'm not bringing the belt with me. So I'm gonna put the intake back in, and it's good to know if I need any other parts. Almost forgot I even had this. And that's van chassis 2 of 3. That was a E550, and I swear, I'm still a Chevy guy. Wait a second, I'm mathing here. Do I have the same amount of Fords as I do Chevys, and I'm calling myself a Chevy guy? No, I got more Chevys. I just remember the Studebaker is on a S10 chassis, so that counts. That's mostly Chevy. I got Chevy motor on stand, that counts. Note to self, no more Fords before I get labeled a Ford guy. So I'm just gonna limit myself to no more Fords. Well, I do have another, oh, the old lady has a Chevy, so, I built that. It's the S10 V8 project, you can watch that video. That just came out. Not a lot of people watch this. Chrysler, I'm gonna keep the Dodges to a minimum, just so I don't get labeled as a Dodge guy either. I just can't do it. I'm gonna limit myself for every 3 Chevys, maximum 2 Dodges, and how many Fords is that? 2.5? That's the max. Capping it out, no more than 3 full ones. No, but seriously, watch the video. I picked this up at auction too. Like, this thing's pretty neat. Who can't love a green on green on green on green vehicle? I'm gonna do some work to this pretty soon, so watch the other video on this and then subscribe to see more of the antics that goes on around At some point I'm gonna buy a body for that, but not today. Okay, alternator in. I put the other plug from the other box truck van in there. This color is different, but it does the same thing. Instead of going to this yellow wire, which would probably work, I just put it back into this. This green one goes to that green with the red. My plug was broken on this one there. I'll just zip tie that out of the way. These tensioners are super tight. I don't know if they're like one-time use, but I had to WD and work that went back and forth. I got the longest bar I own. Well, it's not the longest, it's the longest ratchet for 1/2 inch. And let's see if it starts. It still doesn't want to idle until it gets some temperature into it, but That's 14. That's working. I'll let this sit on there for a second. Fords I know are weird with voltage. I had one, the alternator went bad on me and the transmission stopped shifting. I mean, the alternator wasn't fully bad. It was still charging at like 12.2, but the transmission would stop shifting. It'll probably run better with the intake on it too. 14. All right, let that charge that battery up. I like that. Okay, I got this in my Amazon affiliate link in the description, but that thing worked pretty good to get these pulleys off. These weren't super tight anyways. The nuts were tight, but the pulleys themselves weren't seized, but it popped right off. I mean, I don't really like to recommend China, but can't beat it if it works. Now this alternator might be good, it just might be this, so I'm going to investigate that at some point and see if it's good, and maybe I can just replace that and then have a backup alternator or put it back on the other van. I don't know. Just a little test drive. That's cool. Well, it's not super high, but it is pretty high. I wanted to get that branch there, and then that's definitely tall enough to paint the house and do work around it. I need some electrical work and get some of those cables off of there, but that's pretty good. So that means that'll get that branch. So it's a 28-foot boom. So that with a pole stick, you can get quite a bit. seems to work pretty good. Okay, I got it running like 90% better. On the back of this air box here, the mass airflow sensor slides in there, and there's a grommet with like 4 wires, and it's a big fat plug. That wasn't in there. That's a big fat vacuum leak. You just shoved it in there and now it's idling. It's still got a stumble, but that could be gummy injectors. I do slightly hear another vacuum leak now. But it'll rev up. It wouldn't rev up before all the way. It's got like 90% of its power. So I'm gonna probably pop the doghouse, vacuum pop the doghouse, and look for vacuum leaks or smoke test it or something like that. But it's on its way to run way better now. Okay, I wonder why it's running so crappy. Doghouse out. I think that's the booster line or one of the main vacuum lines. It's got tape on it. So I'm gonna uncover what's going on here. It feels like it's not connected at all. Yeah, I have no idea what the hell I'm looking at there. The other half of the hose, I dropped it somewhere, I can't find it. So I gotta find an elbow. Okay, so I got an elbow in there. They're 2 different sizes on either ends. That's the part number. So if you got a bad vacuum leak on your Ford and it's not running right, it's probably that. This thing's gigantic. I don't know if that's a vacuum leak, but it probably could be. It doesn't sit into... Now it's sitting better. I can put the doghouse back on. I bet you this thing runs a million times better now. Okay, doghouse is in. I washed it. I just hit it with some degreaser. It's still gross, but it's better than it was. First start. Idling, perfect. Oh, wow, that's substantially better. It's been running so bad for so long, I bet you the computer's gonna need a second to figure itself out. I got this box remounted over here. It was a 2-man operation. There's a couple inline fuses in the wires there, so you just need an 11. You pop that off, and you can change the fuse if you have to, but you shouldn't have to now because everything is right. So I could tuck that wire up, but it's just a ground. But we're gonna use it, clean it up, and see what happens. Alright, that's the best it's ever sounded. So let's go use this thing. That's what I did on purpose.